The old CRT television had been left in the corner of the abandoned daycare center for years, forgotten beneath a thick layer of dust and the slow decay of time. Its once vibrant colors had faded into a sickly yellow hue, the plastic casing cracked with age, and the power cord frayed at the edges as if something had been gnawing on it. No one remembered who had left it there or why. The daycare had been shut down decades ago after the incident, the details of which had been scrubbed from police reports and local news archives. The only remnants of its past were the peeling murals of smiling suns and cartoon animals on the walls, their colors now muted into something unsettling, their expressions twisted by time into something almost mocking. Emily hadn't meant to break in. She had only been following a lead, an urban legend whispered among college students about a lost episode of Teletubbies, one that had never aired, one that had driven the crew mad. Some said it was a hoax, others swore they'd seen it, late at night, on dead channels when the static spoke. The door had been unlocked, the wood swollen from years of rain seeping through the broken windows. The air inside was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic, like old pennies left to rot. Her flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating floating motes of dust that swirled like disturbed spirits. The floor creaked beneath her boots, the sound too loud in the suffocating silence. And then, the television turned on by itself. A sharp pop of electricity, a flicker of light, and suddenly the screen buzzed to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the room. Emily froze. She hadn't plugged it in. There was no power in this place. The screen was filled with static at first, the white noise hissing like 1,000 whispered voices. Then, beneath the chaos, a melody began to rise. A synth-pop tune, but wrong, slowed down and warped, the notes dragging like fingernails on glass. A child's voice sang, but it wasn't cheerful. It was hollow. Over the hills and far away. The words stretched unnaturally, the vowels elongating into a moan. The static pulsed in time with the music, forming shapes, silhouettes. 4 of them, standing in a field. But the sky behind them wasn't the bright artificial blue of the show. It was red. A deep bruise-like crimson, swirling like blood in water. Emily's breath hitched. She should have run. She knew she should have run, but she couldn't look away. The count began, a distorted, echoing chant, each number overlapping, spoken in voices that weren't quite human. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. The static surged, and for a split second, the figures on screen moved. Their heads turned in unison, their faces still hidden in shadow. Then the screen cut to black. Silence. Emily exhaled, her hands trembling. A glitch, a trick of the light, that was all. Then, "Time for Teletubbies." The voice was guttural, a wet growl beneath the sing-song tone. The screen flashed, and suddenly the 4 Teletubbies were there, standing too close to the camera, their fur matted and dull, their eyes black, not just dark, empty, like holes punched through reality. Tinky Winky's smile stretched too wide, his teeth too sharp. Dipsy's hat cast a long, unnatural shadow over his face. Lala's antenna twitched like a dying insect. Poe's scooter was tipped over, its wheels spinning lazily, though no one was touching it. And then they spoke. "Tinky Winky," a whisper from the left. "Dipsy," a rasp from the right. "Lala," a giggle from behind her. "Poe," a breath against her neck. Emily spun around, her heart hammering. The room was empty, but the air was cold. Back on the screen, the Teletubbies raised their hands in unison, their fingers too long, their movements jerky like puppets on tangled strings.
"Say hello," they chorused. And then, "Hello!" The word wasn't just coming from the television. It was everywhere. The walls, the floor, inside her head. It stretched, distorted, the voice breaking apart into something guttural, something hungry. The screen flickered again. The Teletubbies were gone. In their place, a single phrase written in jagged, childlike scrawl. "Where have the Teletubbies gone?" And then, just before the television shut off with a final dying whine, Emily saw it. A small bloody handprint pressed against the inside of the screen, as if something had been trying to get out. The room plunged into darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a baby's laughter echoed. Emily didn't wait to hear it again. She ran.
The cold night air burned Emily's lungs as she sprinted away from the daycare, her boots pounding against cracked pavement. She didn't stop until she reached her car, fumbling with the keys, her hand shaking so badly she dropped them twice. The metallic clink against the asphalt was too loud in the suffocating silence of the empty street. When she finally got the door open, she slammed it shut behind her, locking it with a frantic click. Only then did she let herself breathe, her forehead pressing against the steering wheel as she gulped down air like she'd been drowning. It was just a glitch, a weird broadcast, some sick joke. But the handprint, the voice, the way the Teletubbies had looked at her, like they knew her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, making her flinch. A text from Mark, her only friend who hadn't laughed when she told him about the lost episode rumor. "You still alive, or did the haunted toddler show get you?" She typed back, fingers unsteady. "Something's wrong with that place." 3 dots appeared. Then, "No shit, that's why I told you not to go alone." Emily swallowed. She hadn't told them she was going tonight. She turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life like a welcome distraction. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty road ahead. She just needed to get home, to forget this, to... Her radio crackled. Static. Then, "Over the hills and far away." The same warped child's voice from the TV. Emily's blood turned to ice. She slammed her hand against the power button, but the radio didn't turn off. The song continued, the melody twisting into something darker, the notes dragging like a record played at the wrong speed. "Teletubbies come to play." A shadow moved in the rearview mirror. Emily's breath caught. Something was in the back seat. She whipped around. Nothing, but the seat was dented, as if someone had just been sitting there. The radio hissed, the voice dropping to a whisper. 1, 2, 3, 4. Emily stomped on the gas. The car lurched forward, tire screeching. She didn't look back. By the time she reached her apartment, her hands were glued to the wheel, her knuckles white. The radio had gone silent miles ago, but the echo of that voice lingered in the back of her skull. Her apartment was dark when she entered. The familiar scent of old books and coffee offered no comfort. She flipped on the lights, half expecting to see the Teletubby standing in her living room, their hollow eyes fixed on her. But the room was empty. She locked the door, checked the windows, peered into the closet. Nothing. You're losing it. She needed sleep. But as she collapsed onto her bed, her phone buzzed again. A video file sent from an unknown number. No message, just a thumbnail, a blurry image of the daycare's TV screen. She shouldn't open it. She knew she shouldn't. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then pressed play. The video was grainy, the colors washed out. The camera panned across the empty daycare, lingering on the television in the corner, the same one she'd just fled from. The screen flickered. Then, the sun baby. But its face was wrong.
Its usual giggling smile was gone, replaced with a slack, empty expression. Its eyes were sewn shut with thick black thread, the stitches pulling its skin taut. Dark liquid dripped from the corners, streaking down its cheeks like tears. The camera zoomed in. The sun baby's lips twitched, then parted, and it screamed, a sound so raw, so human, that Emily dropped her phone. The screen shattered, but the audio kept playing. The scream faded into ragged, wet breaths. Then a whisper. "Where have the Teletubbies gone?" The video ended. Her phone screen went black, then lit up again, this time with a single pulsing notification. "Look up." Her breath hitched. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at her to run, she raised her head. Her bedroom window, there, pressed against the glass, was a face. Not the sun baby, not a Teletubby, but something worse. A hollow-eyed, grinning thing, its skin the texture of static, its mouth stretching too wide. As it whispered, "Time for Teletubbies." The scream tore from Emily's throat before she could stop it. She scrambled backward across the bed, sheets tangling around her legs, as the thing outside the window tilted its head, too far, too wrong, with a wet, cracking sound. Its grin widened, splitting its face like a rotten fruit, revealing rows of needle-thin teeth that glistened in the dim streetlight. "Tinky Winky misses you," it whispered, its voice a distorted warble, like a corrupted audio file. Emily's hand fumbled for the lamp on her nightstand, knocking over a half-empty water glass in her panic. The light flickered on, and the face was gone. Only darkness pressed against the window now, the kind of darkness that felt alive. Her phone buzzed violently against the mattress where she dropped it. The screen flashed. "He has your name now." Then, before she could process the words, the screen changed again, a live feed from her own camera, showing her wide-eyed, terrified reflection. Behind her, in the corner of her bedroom where the shadows pooled thickest, something moved, a flicker of purple, a low, gurgling chuckle. The camera feed cut to static. Emily didn't hesitate. She bolted from the bed, nearly tripping in her haste, and threw open her bedroom door. The hallway light was out. The only illumination came from the living room TV, which was on. Of course it was on. The screen showed the Teletubbies field, but the grass was blackened and withered, the sky a sickly green. Tinky Winky stood front and center, his normally cheerful purple fur matted with something dark and wet. His eyes were gone, leaving behind empty sockets that wept thick, viscous fluid. In his hand, the red bag twitched. "Emily," Tinky Winky crooned, his voice bubbling up from the TV speakers like tar. "Emily, Emily, Emily." Her name sounded wrong in his mouth, like it didn't belong to her anymore. The bag in his hand jerked violently. A small, muffled scream came from inside it. Emily took a step back. Her heel hit something soft. She looked down. Her yellow bath towel lay crumpled on the floor, except, no, that wasn't right. It wasn't a towel. It was fur. Lala's fur. A giggle echoed from the kitchen, high-pitched, wrong. The TV screen flickered. Tinky Winky was closer now, his face nearly pressed against the screen, his empty eye sockets staring right at her. "Time to play," he whispered. The bag in his hand burst open. Dozens of tiny skeletal fingers wriggled out, grasping at the air. Emily didn't wait to see what came next. She turned and ran for the front door, only to skid to a stop. Dangling from the doorknob was a familiar red bag. It was dripping, and it was breathing. From behind her, the television volume spiked to deafening levels. "Tinky Winky loves his bag!"
The bag on the doorknob twitched, then unzipped itself. Emily didn't scream this time. She couldn't, because the thing that crawled out of the bag was already screaming for her. The thing that emerged from the bag wasn't a hand. It wasn't a child. It was nothing, a writhing mass of blackened tendons and snapping joints, fingers fused together at unnatural angles, stretching toward her like a spider testing its web. The scream that came from it wasn't human. It was the sound of a VHS tape rewinding too fast, a glitching, high-pitched shriek that made Emily's teeth vibrate. She stumbled back, her shoulder slamming into the wall. The television behind her blared, "Dipsy likes his hat!" The thing from the bag twitched at the sound, its fingers curling into fists before exploding outward again, longer now, the bones cracking as they stretched. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps. The front door was blocked, the windows. Her gaze flicked to the kitchen, the back door. She moved. The second her foot left the carpet, the thing lunged. It missed her by inches, its fingers scraping against the wallpaper, leaving behind jagged grooves like claw marks. Emily didn't look back. She sprinted through the living room, past the TV where Tinky Winky's hollow face leered, his laughter a wet, gurgling sound. The kitchen was dark. The only light came from the microwave display. 00, flashing red. The back door was just ahead. She was going to make it. Then, thud. Something heavy hit the floor behind her. Emily froze. Slowly, against every screaming instinct in her body, she turned. The refrigerator door hung open. Inside, where her groceries should have been, stood Dipsy. His green fur was slick with something dark, his body too tall, too thin, his limbs bent at sharp, impossible angles to fit inside the cramped space. His hat was tilted forward, casting his face in shadow. But she could still see his smile, wide, hungry. "Emily," he crooned, his voice layered with something deeper beneath it. "You forgot to say hello." The microwave beeped. The back door locked itself with a sharp click. Dipsy's head tilted, his hat shifted, and beneath it, another face stared back at her, pale, stretched, with too many teeth. The television in the living room roared to life again, the sound bleeding through the walls. "Time for Teletubbies! Time for Teletubbies!" Dipsy's hand shot out, his fingers elongating, bones cracking as they stretched. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps, the frying pan from the dish rack, and swung. The impact made a sound like a watermelon dropped from a great height. Dipsy's head snapped to the side, his hat fell off. And what was underneath, Emily didn't stay to look. She smashed the pan through the kitchen window and moved, glass shredding her palms as she hauled herself through. The cold night air hit her like a slap. She didn't stop, didn't look back. Behind her, from inside the house, something screeched. Not Dipsy, not the thing from the bag, but the sun baby, its voice warped beyond recognition, howling a single word. "Po!" And then, from the darkness of the alley ahead, a small red scooter rolled into view. Its wheels were covered in something wet, and it was coming right for her. The scooter moved on its own, not rolling, slithering, its handlebars twisting like the neck of some predatory bird as it cornered Emily in the alley. The red paint glistened under the flickering streetlight, too wet, too fresh. The metallic stench of old blood clogged her throat with every panicked breath. She backed against the brick wall, glass still embedded in her palms. The scooter stopped inches from her sneakers. A giggle echoed from the darkness, high-pitched. Wrong. Emily knew that laugh. Yellow flashed between the dumpsters, a twitching antenna, the gleam of wide, unblinking eyes reflecting the streetlight like an animal caught in headlights. Lala stepped into view. Her fur wasn't yellow anymore. It was jaundiced, stained with patches of something black and fungal. Her ball, once bright and bouncy, now sagged in her grip like a deflated lung, its surface pulsing with veins. "Lala loves her ball," the television whispered, from somewhere, from everywhere, the voice oozing out of the alley walls themselves. The ball twitched in Lala's hands, then melted. Thick, syrupy liquid dripped between her fingers, hitting the pavement like a sound like raw meat slapping concrete. Where it landed, the asphalt bubbled. Lala's head jerked to the side. Crack! Her neck didn't snap back. It stayed bent. Her grin widened, stretching her face until the skin at the corners of her mouth split. "Catch!" she gurgled. She threw the ball. Emily ducked. It hit the wall behind her with a wet splat and stuck. The deflated rubber peeled open like a flower blooming in reverse, revealing a mouth lined with jagged baby teeth. A tongue, black and forked, lashed out, whipping past Emily's ear. The ball hissed. Lala clapped her hands, her movement spastic, disjointed. "Again! Again!" The ball detached from the wall with a sound like Velcro tearing. It hit the ground and bounced. Higher, faster, coming right for Emily's face. She grabbed a trash can lid and swung. The impact sent the ball flying back at Lala, who caught it with a wet squelch. The ball pulsed in her hands, then exploded. Rotten syrup sprayed across the alley. Lala staggered back, her fur sizzling where the liquid touched. She didn't scream. She laughed. A broken, glitching sound like a corrupted audio file. Her body convulsed. Then, pop! Her antenna detached, hitting the ground with a metallic ping. The laughter stopped. Lala's head snapped up. Her eyes were gone. Only hollow sockets remained, dripping thick black fluid. "Bad, Emily," she whispered. Behind her, the shadows moved. The scooter rolled forward. The television voices chanted, "Time for Teletubbies! Time for Teletubbies!" And then a new sound. A thump from inside the dumpster. Emily turned just as the lid burst open, and Poe climbed out. Her red fur was matted with garbage and things Emily didn't want to identify. Her scooter was gone. In its place, a knife. Rusty, dripping. Poe's smile stretched ear to ear. "Tag," she whispered. "You're it." The blade glinted under the flickering streetlight, jagged and serrated, like it had been broken off from something larger. Poe's tiny fingers curled around the handle with unnatural precision, her knuckles popping as she adjusted her grip. Emily's breath hitched. There was nowhere left to run. The alley dead-ended behind her. Lala's twitching body blocked the left. The scooter, still oozing, cut off the right. And Poe stood in front of her, tilting her head like a curious child studying a bug before pulling its wings off. "Emily," Poe sang, her voice too sweet, too high. "You're not playing right." The knife twitched in her hand. Emily's fingers tightened around the trash can lid, her only weapon. The metal was dented from hitting Lala's ball, the edges sharp enough to draw blood. Poe took a step forward, then another. Her footsteps didn't make a sound. The television static grew louder, spilling from the alley walls, vibrating in Emily's skull. "Poe loves her scooter," the voices chanted. But Poe wasn't holding a scooter anymore. The knife dragged against the pavement as she walked, sparks flying where metal met concrete. Emily raised the lid. Poe giggled, then lunged. The knife arced through the air. Emily swung. The lid connected with Poe's wrist. A sickening crack. Poe didn't scream. She laughed. Her hand hung limp, fingers still gripping the knife, even as the bone jutted through green-tinged skin. "Oops," Poe whispered. Then she twisted her wrist back into place with a wet snap. Emily stumbled back. Poe advanced. The scooter rolled closer. Lala's body twitched, her hollow sockets fixed on Emily. And then, a new sound. A whimper. From inside the dumpster. Emily's gaze flicked toward it. A tiny hand, pale, trembling, gripped the edge of the dumpster. A child. A real child. No older than 5, her blonde hair matted with filth, her wide eyes filled with tears. "Help!" the girl mouthed. Poe's head snapped toward the sound. Her grin widened. "Found you!" she sang. The knife glinted. Emily didn't think. She moved. Diving between Poe and the dumpster, she grabbed the girl and yanked her out just as the knife came down, sinking into the trash bags instead. Poe let out a shriek of frustration. Emily didn't wait. She ran. The girl clung to her, tiny arms wrapped around her neck, her breath hot and panicked against Emily's skin. Behind them, Poe's laughter echoed, mingling with the television's chant. "Time for Teletubbies! Time for Teletubbies!" And then, a new voice, deeper, ominous. "Tinky Winky wants his bag back." Emily didn't look back. She already knew what she'd see. The alley stretched ahead, the streetlight at the end flickering like a dying pulse. She ran faster. The girl in her arms whimpered. "They're coming," she whispered. Emily knew. She could feel them. Close. Too close. And then, the streetlight shattered. Darkness swallowed them whole. Poe's giggle came from inches away. "Got you!"
Darkness. Absolute. Suffocating. Emily's sneakers skidded on wet pavement as the last streetlight died. The little girl in her arms trembled, her breath coming in shallow, terrified hiccups. Then, a click. A whirring, mechanical sound. The static wasn't just in Emily's head anymore. It crackled to life around them, vibrating through the alley walls, the dumpsters, the very air itself. And then, light. Not from above, from ahead. A television screen flickered to life at the end of the alley, floating impossibly in mid-air. The image was distorted, warped, but Emily could still make out the familiar, cursed landscape of Teletubby Land. The sky wasn't blue, it was black. The grass wasn't green, it was rotting. And in the center of the screen, the sun baby's face loomed, its stitched-shut eyelids straining against the threads. Its mouth opened, and it sang. "Hush now, Emily." The voice was wrong. A chorus of children layered with something guttural, something hungry. The little girl in Emily's arms let out a choked sob. "No, no, no," she whimpered, tiny fingers digging into Emily's shoulders. "Not the song! Not the song!" Behind them, the scrape of Poe's knife against brick. To the left, the wet squelch of Lala's deflating ball. To the right, a deep, reverberating chuckle. "Dipsy likes this game," the voice rumbled. And then, worst of all, from directly behind Emily, so close she could feel the breath on her neck, Tinky Winky wants to play. The television screen pulsed. The Sun Baby's song grew louder, the words twisting, distorting. Close your eyes, time to sleep. Emily's limbs grew heavy, her vision blurred. The little girl in her arms went limp. "No!" Emily gasped, shaking her. "Stay awake, you have to!" A hand clamped over her mouth. Not a hand, a paw. Purple fur reeking of copper and something spoiled. Tinky Winky leaned in, his empty eye sockets weeping black tears. "Shh! Time for Teletubbies." The television screen surged forward, expanding, swallowing the alley whole. The last thing Emily saw was the Sun Baby stitches bursting open, revealing hollow, endless darkness beneath. And then, static.
Static. Endless, all-consuming static. Emily opened her eyes, or at least she thought she did. There was no difference anymore. The world was noise, a screaming white void that pressed against her from all sides, vibrating through her teeth, her bones, the marrow of her very soul. She tried to move. Nothing responded. She tried to scream. The static swallowed it whole. And then, a voice. Not the Teletubbies, not the Sun Baby. Hers, but warped, stretched thin. A voice from a lifetime ago when she still had a body, when she still had a name. "What did you do?" her own voice whispered, echoing from somewhere deep inside the chaos. "What did you let them do to you?" The static pulsed. Shapes formed in the chaos. Faces she almost recognized. The little girl from the alley, her blonde hair now tangled with wires, her eyes replaced with flickering screens. Mark, his mouth sewn shut with coaxial cable, his fingers twitching in binary. And then, them. The four. Tinky Winky, Dipsy, La-La, Pooh. But they weren't separate anymore. They merged, a grotesque, writhing mass of fur and static, their limbs fused together, their faces melting into one another, their voices layering into a single endless chant. Time for Teletubbies, time for Teletubbies, time for Teletubbies. The Sun Baby's face loomed above them, its stitches fully torn now, its mouth a yawning void. It wasn't singing anymore. It was screaming, and from its throat poured everything, every lost episode, every corrupted broadcast, every child who had ever vanished into the static. They spilled out in a flood of glitching limbs and distorted laughter, their bodies unraveling into pixels, into noise, into nothing. Emily reached for them. Her hands came apart in the static. The last thing she heard was her own voice, whispering from somewhere far away. "You should have turned off the TV." And then, silence. The screen goes dark. The old television sat untouched in the abandoned daycare. No signal, no static, just dust. Until a single pulsing line of text scrolled across the black screen. Transmission ends, transmission begins. Somewhere, in a quiet house, a child laughed. A television turned on by itself, and a familiar, warped melody began to play. Over the hills and far away. The cycle repeats. It always does. Good night, Emily. Time for Teletubbies.